Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Professor Leon Blevins, Professor of Government at El Paso Community College. And I want at the very outset thank our crew because we're at an on-site location downtown El Paso. So Mark and Marco and Pat, we want to thank you for being here and doing this for us. I have the special guest with me today. It's Maribel Villalva. Thank you for letting us come to the Holocaust Museum. And tell us a little bit about the museum. Where are we? What is the location, the address?
Well, welcome to the El Paso Holocaust Museum and Study Center at 715 North Oregon.
Okay.
And we are just a little bit outside downtown proper, but we like to think we're in the museum district because we're just 2 blocks away from the History Museum and Sites Museum, and then another 3 blocks from the El Paso Museum of Art. So we're very centrally located, and we just really want everybody to come down here whenever they get the opportunity. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Well, while we're dealing with the factual information, tell us about your hours of operation. When do you open? When do you close?
Sure, we are open Tuesday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 5 p.m., closed on Mondays.
You want to give us a telephone number, a website, anything like that?
Telephone 351-0048, and our website is elpasoholocaustmuseum.org.
Maribel, I remember seeing you in the past with the El Paso Times and also seeing you on television, a liaison with one of the TV stations here. Tell us about how you ended up in this particular position as Executive Director of the Holocaust Museum and Study Center.
Well, it's actually a pretty interesting story. I was with the El Paso Times for 15 years. And during that time, I mostly wrote about the museums, the arts and culture here in El Paso. So I came to know the story of the El Paso Holocaust Museum and Study Center very well, and I came to know the people very well as well. So one day, the former director, Leslie Novick, called me to just tell me that she was getting ready to retire. And I made a joke with her that day that I was going to apply for her job. And it really was a joke at the time, but then I mentioned it to somebody else, and they said, wow, you should really apply, you'd be really good for that. And then it got the wheels moving, so to speak, and before I knew it, I was turning in my application and getting called for an interview, and here I am. I never thought I would leave the world of journalism, and now that I've been here for several months, I love it, and I don't know that I would go back. Although I do miss writing, but,
sure.
You can always
Well, of course, the Holocaust is about the extermination of millions and millions of Jewish people, particularly in Europe, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party.
That's right.
And so this is a unique situation in El Paso. In fact, this is just one of a number of Holocaust museums around the world. Do you know how many maybe in the United States?
We are just one of 13 Holocaust museums in the United States. Now, there are other Holocaust centers, but as far as freestanding museums, we are just one of 13. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize, and they should realize, because we really are a treasure here in El Paso. I do have plans to visit some of the other museums. Hopefully this summer I'll be able to go to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And we have a really good working relationship with them, with the Dallas Holocaust Museum, with the Houston Holocaust Museum. We speak regularly, so I really want to get to meet these people in person.
Usually I ask questions about relationships between organizations. I would assume that you also interact with other organizations and other museums or theatrical groups in El Paso. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Since I've been here, we've already developed relationships with the Anti-Defamation League. Through them, we are going to be designated a no place for hate. Also, we have relationships with the YWCA with their racial justice program. We joined forces in January for Martin Luther King Day to show a film here titled Skin Deep. And that was really interesting because the type of group that attracted, it was a very diverse group, and after this film, everybody just engaged in a wonderful conversation about diversity and tolerance. We also have developed partnerships with the El Paso Playhouse, and at the end of this month, the El Paso Playhouse is going to donate 1 day of their play, I Never Saw Another Butterfly, to the Holocaust Museum to raise money for the museum. And as many people know, that is a Holocaust-related play.
I usually date these programs so that people put that in perspective, and this is April of 2009. So if someone is watching it now, they'll be aware of something coming up, or if they watch it 3 years from now, they'll be aware that things have changed. Now tell me about, let's talk about past, present, and then
Sure.
future. With the past, how did this museum begin?
Well, it was exactly 25 years ago, and Holocaust survivor Henry Callan was living in El Paso, and his first wife had just died. And in several interviews with Henry, I've come to know his story very well, and he's told me that for several years after they moved to the United States, they did not speak about the Holocaust. It just brought up too many horrible memories for them, so they vowed to each other that they would not speak about it at all. And after she died in '83, he started hearing about books that were being published that were denying the Holocaust, calling it the biggest hoax of the 20th century. So that really started him thinking that as a survivor, he had a responsibility to tell his story. And so it started just with a little collection of books and, a few little items of memorabilia. And he asked the El Paso Jewish Federation if he could have a display case in one of their rooms to start showing this. And people started hearing about this display case and that he had a story to tell. So they started organizing groups to go to this small little office in this building. And literally, that's how it grew into the first museum. Next door, the Jewish Community Center was able to become the first official museum, and with the help of some very generous El Pasoans who gave the money necessary, they were able to open the doors to that museum. As many people know, that first museum was destroyed in an electrical fire because of faulty wiring in 2001, and several of the original artifacts were destroyed. But almost immediately, the board at that time decided that they were going to rebuild. So it took about 7 years, but they were able to raise enough money and enough community support to buy this building that we are currently in. And this building finally opened its doors in January of 2008.
Now I noticed in your office you had a small photograph of that first exhibit that Henry Callan put in that Federation office.
That's
and I asked you to
right.
bring it, so we want you to hold that in such a position that perhaps our camera can focus on
Sure.
that. And if there's any problem on that, we can reshoot that picture and then weave it in so that it can be shown.
Sure.
That's the small seeds of the beginning of this museum.
This is the very beginning. This was 1984.
Well, we're glad that you brought
Yeah.
that. So the past, there are others, of course, he didn't do this all alone. There were many other families here and other places, I understand, that contributed artifacts for the second museum.
That's right. It's important to note that in El Paso, there were several dozen survivors that made El Paso their home, and just over the years they've passed away. We have about a dozen survivors left. So many of those families did give items to the museum. Now, after the fire happened in 2001, there were many museums around the world and organizations that donated items to the museum to help replenish what was lost. In fact, the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. donated 12 cases of books for our library that were originally going to go to the Library of Congress,
Wow.
but then they decided that we needed them more because of what had happened.
You know, in many ways, this is a very, very sad place to visit, and I know it must have been very hard for the survivors to come, even now, come and look at this. The sad part, but there's also something of joy about this location, because there's the joy of the spirit of survival. These people that went through the horrors of the Holocaust in those camps came out and then came out into the desert of El Paso, the sunshine of a new life, starting a lot of things over. And I look around and I see this, and there's the essence of the seed of new life
That's
and
right.
new beginnings. And so this reminds us of a horrible past, but the potential for a great future.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that, because that goes hand in hand with the story of the museum as well, because it's been through so many obstacles, and after each one it survives, and it's better than ever. You know, we had the fire, and that really motivated everybody in the community to get behind the museum and to rebuild, and then this place reopened. And sadly, 6 weeks after it opened its doors, there was a city main break that caused it to flood from the inside out.
A water break.
A water break,
Oh,
that's right.
my word.
And it had to close down for 6 weeks while everything was cleaned and sanitized, and computers were replaced, and furniture was replaced, and bookshelves, and that kind of set us back several months in terms of the library opening, and but we're here and we're strong.
Survivors.
And tours, tours have resumed, and we're as good as new.
Now, in the past, you've had some fundraisers. I remember you brought in David Marcus, I believe, with your group. Brought in Mr. Gorbachev and brought in Bill Clinton as a speaker, and so you had some fundraisers in the past.
That's right, Mario Cuomo, Rudy Giuliani. So the museum really was known for bringing in some big name speakers, and I was with the El Paso Times at that time, and so I got to go to all of these as a reporter and cover them. And I remember that those were the events of the year.
Right.
A lot of people paid a lot of money to go to those events.
Yeah, my wife and I paid $100 a piece
Right?
or something to go to some of those. So
and a lot of
really
people
good.
still associate the museum with those big name speakers, and they did a lot to raise awareness for the museum.
Okay, so that's the past. Tell us about the present. You have a staff that helps you. I know you don't do this all yourself, and you're new to the job.
No.
Tell us about your staff and any ways we should contact them if we want tours or something.
Absolutely, and I've been very blessed to have inherited a wonderful staff. Vanessa Nevares is our office manager, and she's been here maybe just about 4 or 5 months before I came on board. And Jamie Williams is our education director, and she started maybe about 2 months before I came on board. So we're all very new, we're all learning from each other, but we're just having a wonderful time just getting the word out about the museum. Jamie's in charge of scheduling all the school tours, tours with civic groups and organizations. She also is the contact point for educators who want to learn how to teach the Holocaust. She can really help them put some curriculum together for their classrooms and prepare our students before they actually come for a tour here.
And so they would call that same number you gave us at the top of the program.
That's right, and just ask for Jamie.
Okay, what about the future? Let's deal with the future just a bit. You're new, but I'm sure you have in your head some things you'd like to do, and you suggested to the board that you'd like to do with the museum.
I do. I want to do a lot more community outreach events. For example, I'm toying with the idea of a photo contest involving amateur and professional photographers on tolerance. Demonstrate to us how you see tolerance or how you see intolerance happening in our community, and just making them more involved in the things that we do. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, and so we are planning some things for the fall. We have our Tour de Tolerance, which is our big bike fundraiser for cyclists, and then we're going to have a gala in November. But beyond that, it's just going to take it one step at a time. I know we want to do things for the younger students. We do require students to be at least 12 years old or in the 6th grade if they're with schools.
Yeah, this is a very sensitive subject.
Exactly,
you're looking
because of the subject matter, to come to the museum. However, if they're with parents or a legal guardian, then they can come in at any age. But we feel that there's a gap, for the younger students to come to the museum. So we want to start offering things like a summer camp to start off teaching them tolerance with age-appropriate books and activities to get them to come back when they are ready to learn about the Holocaust.
Right. Recently, I guess the last time that I saw you was at community college at a diversity program. A friend of mine, Olga Chavez, is in charge of the diversity program. And you had a table set up there and Holocaust material in it. I urged some of my students, in fact all of my students, to go to that program, and I told them I'd give them extra credit if they went and write a one-page report and turn it in, and some of them turned in about how they were impressed, especially with the material they picked up on the Holocaust. Some of them brought it back to the classroom and showed it to the other members of the class. So we appreciate you coming out there and being on that. Now we have a little bit of time left, and what we want to do at this point is get you to give us a verbal walking tour through the different galleries in this museum. So you describe where you begin at the front and where we come out at the end of this walking tour.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I do want to say is that we are free, because that is the most common question that we get as people walk in the door is, how much do you charge? And we don't charge admission. We accept donations, however. But when you come in, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to see a 10-minute video. It's an introductory video about our museum, and for many people it's a refresher course about the events that led up to the Holocaust, or for people who are just now hearing about it. It gives a little bit of background as to the events that led up to the Holocaust, so that when they do go through the galleries, they can understand it a little bit better. Once they see that video, they're going to walk through our first gallery, which is dedicated to Jewish life in Europe before World War II. You're going to see a dining room set that is typical of what a Jewish dining room would have looked like pre-World War II. And we stress the fact that Jews in Europe were living a very good life. They were very proud Germans. Many Jews had fought in World War I and were war heroes. So that's one of the things that we stress in this gallery. And on the other side of that, you would see a photo wall. This is a very special photo wall to the El Paso Holocaust Museum because, again, we use this photo wall to demonstrate that Jews in Europe were living a very normal life. They were no different than anybody else. They were getting married. They were part of athletic groups. But what makes this wall special to the museum is that all of these people are in one way or another related to El Pasoans. These are ancestors of El Pasoans. Many of these people died in the Holocaust. Many of them survived. And we have many volunteers who are our docents who actually give tours to some of the groups that come in, and you'll hear them say, oh, that's my grandma.
That's a good sized wall too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're going to get to see that in the first gallery. The next gallery is going to be the rise of Nazism. And this is when you first start hearing about Hitler. Well, who was Hitler, and why did he get into power, and how was he able to convince all of Europe that they needed to hate the Jews? And so the galleries are set up in chronological order to take you through the events that happened in the Holocaust. After that, you would see the propaganda wall. And as I take students through on tours, I like to tell them that this was the most important way that the Nazi Party had to get their message across on why Jews were evil, or according to them, why they needed to be persecuted. And kids relate to it when you tell them there was no CNN at the time, there was no YouTube at the time. All you had was propaganda that was everywhere you looked, and Jews were depicted with the big noses and the beady eyes and as monsters. And for somebody who didn't know a Jew, it became very easy to believe that that's what
these
they
were
looked
caricatures
like.
of these very, very normal people.
Absolutely, and that was the most important tool that the Nazi Party used. The next gallery you're going to see is this gallery here, and this is the gallery dedicated to the ghettos. The ghettos were spaces that Jews were placed in after they were taken from their homes, and you would see several thousand Jews in these spaces that were originally homes for about 50 families or so, and they were just packed into these living spaces with horrible living conditions. Behind me, you're going to see the rail car. Many Holocaust museums around the country have original rail cars that were used to transport Jews to concentration camps. This is not an original rail car. It was created by the museum's designer, Victor Mireles, and it's actually a little wider and a little longer than an original rail car would have been, but it's very representative of the types of cars that were used to transport Jews to the different camps. You're going to walk through the rail car and go into our concentration camp gallery. And this is a pretty hard gallery for a lot of people to go through. It's very graphic, but a very necessary gallery in this type of a museum to see some of the atrocities that happened to the Jews. This is where you're going to learn about the gas chambers. This is where you're going to learn about the things that were done to the bodies after they were gassed. Jewish prisoners were taken and used as Sonderkommandos. Now, Sonderkommandos, their job was to pull the bodies out of the chambers, to shave their head, to take the gold teeth out of their mouths. and then to put them into the crematoriums. And you have to understand that a lot of these people were their family members or people they knew or had grown up with. So it was a very horrible job. And after a few months of doing this, those same Sonderkommandos were killed themselves. So this is the gallery where you're going to learn about that. After that, you're going to walk into our Liberators Gallery. Here you're going to learn about people called righteous among the nation. And I like to tell people that if there was a good thing that came out of the Holocaust, it was the righteous among the nation, because these are actually non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. And you have to be designated a righteous among the nation by Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. So you have to be nominated for that and be approved by a committee. And there are more than 20,000 righteous among the nation. However, in our gallery here, we only show you 36. And the reason we only show you 36 representing the different countries is because in Hebrew, the number 36 means double life. So all of these people risked their life to give Jews a second chance at life. And you'll hear also about the liberation from when the Allies came in and started liberating some of these camps as well.
Now, on that wall, we hear names like Schindler
Absolutely.
and Wallenberg, some of those that risked their own lives to help the Jewish people.
Absolutely. Oskar Schindler being one of the most recognizable names, but you're also going to see a name from Lithuania, Andras Urbanos. And this is the gentleman who hid Henry Callan, his wife, and his nephew Jerry in a farmhouse. And if it weren't for this gentleman, we would not have this museum here in El Paso.
Right. We have just about 4 minutes remaining. How many more galleries do we have?
We have one more gallery after that.
Okay.
And it's our memorial room. And this memorial room serves several purposes. It pays homage to the 1.5 Jewish children who were killed in the Holocaust for the simple fact that they were Jewish.
The 1.5 million
Yes.
children that were killed, okay.
Also, this is where you're going to learn about some of the local survivors who made El Paso their home. And like I told you earlier, El Paso was home to several dozen survivors. And at this time, we have about 12 or 13 survivors who are still living here.
Tell me about some of the comments that you hear when people have come through these galleries and before they go out your front door, they exit.
Well, we do have a guest book that we ask people to sign and to leave their comments, and everybody just tells us they are very moved. They think this museum is a wonderful tool for learning, but also for reflection. It also motivates them to go home and talk to their children, or if they're children, to go home and talk to their parents. In fact, we have seen so many school children who come here as a result of a school tour, and they think they're just coming for a field trip, so of course, you know, they sign up, but then they come back with their parents because they want their parents to see it, and we're just so proud of the fact that we can offer that to the children and to families as well.
Now, you also have a gift shop, I noticed. I went in your gift shop. You want to tell us about items they could look at there and perhaps purchase
Absolutely.
a few things?
We have books and DVDs for all age groups, and they're all about the Holocaust. They're about tolerance. Of course, Anne Frank. Anything Anne Frank is going to be a bestseller here, because that's one of the first books that children read to learn about the Holocaust, and it means something to them. And when they come through here, they remember her story, and they want to walk out with something of hers. So definitely you're going to see a lot of Anne Frank books. But for people who want to continue learning about the Holocaust, we do have several books and DVDs on that.
Mm-hmm. And in your study center, I wish I'd known about this earlier. I could have donated you some books on Jewish history and things like that.
You still can.
Well, I've given them to other places already, and maybe if I come across some more, I can get those too. You certainly accept donations.
We do.
And you have scholars that come here to do some research from this area.
Well, our library is newly opened. It is the Robert and Sarah Shyloff Library and Study Center. And that was one of the challenges after this flood happened, is that it kind of put the library on the back burner. And that was one of the first things that I wanted to do when I came on board, is open that up to the public, which it is open now. And it contains books on everything about the Holocaust. You know, if you want to learn about a specific ghetto, we probably have a book on that. You know, if you just want to learn about anti-Semitism, we have several books on that. Books about Hitler, books about the doctors that performed these horrible things to,
Well, we're
to
glad
Jewish prisoners.
our time has run out. We're glad that we've given you the opportunities. I extend to you a friendship hand,
Thank you.
a hand of love for all of the work that's happening right here at the Holocaust Museum. We wish you the very best.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
And thank you for tuning in once again to Perspectives El Paso. Stay tuned in the future for other very interesting locations.